How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm so excited about this
I'm so excited as well. And thank you
podcast.
so much for having me and reaching out.
Um,
I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Girl, let me tell you this. You do not have to worry about me wanting to reach out to you because first and foremost, I saw the most lovely cover spread with you on the front
Um,
cover. That was so brilliantly done. Gulfshire Life did a spread and Gina donned the cover, and it
yeah.
was so creatively, artfully thoughtful and done. So yeah, that was
Well,
so cool.
I have to say I had nothing to do with it. Literally, they had reached out to me just to do a feature of my business, which was a complete honor because I actually subscribed to the magazine myself. So I receive it in the mail. So when they reached out, I was like, what? And I don't subscribe to anything, but I subscribe to them because I really, really love the magazine. So it was an honor, first and foremost, to be featured. And then when they asked me about the cover, I was like, oh my God, I was actually in Champagne.
Were you at the time when they reached?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And
Okay, that's
they,
Champagne, France, for all of my listeners around the world.
yes.
That's
Yeah, I was
Champagne,
in
France.
Champagne, France with one of my trip with
Not
one of my
Illinois.
trips.
Not Illinois.
No, no, not Illinois yet.
For my
Yeah.
Midwest folks. Okay.
Yeah, so when I got the message about the cover, they wanted to the photo shoot while I was still there. So I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but if there's any way you can push it just to I literally will travel down immediately as soon as I get back." And they said, "Okay, if that's the case, then let's do it the next day you arrive." But obviously, as you know, with all the like the travel issues happening, my flight was extremely delayed. So I didn't get in until Monday morning at 3 a.m. and my photo shoot was at 7 in
Oh,
Naples. So I literally
oh.
arrived home, washed my hair, drove straight. Well, actually, my husband, I'm so lucky. He was like, I woke him up at 3 a.m. and I said, listen, I don't think I can drive. I'm just flown over from France. I had no sleep. Can you please drive me down? Went down there for 7 a.m. photo shoot, and yeah, that was that. So they were so nice to feature me, and it was an amazing experience. So yeah, but
Wow.
Omar Cruz was the photographer, and he had that whole idea in his head, and he's amazing, and he's so talented. So
So Omar Cruz, you nailed it. We need to know more
yeah.
about you for sure. That's so cool. So let's talk a little bit about this, why they reached out to you. So A Vine Affair is your business, right? And
Mhm.
I am just so taken by it. I'm gonna tell you a fun fact. So I did a thing called Turn 50, like a couple years ago. Pre-COVID, it was actually
Oh, really?
2019.
You
Yeah.
actually turned 50. I don't
I
even believe it by looking at
did.
you.
I
I'm like, at
did.
first I was like, is turn 50 a certain thing? Because you don't look like you've turned 50.
You are now in my new phase, okay? We got that.
No,
That's
it's
what
the
we are.
truth.
That's what we are. Well, thank you, Gina. I'd like to call it good living, or at least trying to anyway, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'll tell you this. So I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana originally, and my girlfriends, a good group of girlfriends that I grew up with, the high school circuit and all the things, we decided to celebrate collectively our birthdays, and we called
Cool.
it the Fab 50 trip. And we went to Napa,
Oh,
got a wonderful Kardashian-like house,
yeah.
and did everything from the karaoke to the dance offs to the pajama
Mhm.
party to all of the amazing wineries around, spa days, and it was amazing. And so one of the stops on our visit was to Domaine Carnieres,
Yeah. Yeah, I've been. Yes. Yeah.
which was very lovely. And I will tell you that it was, of course, champagne has been in my repertoire as a businesswoman as you travel. And typically, it's had a very specific place, right? We've often engaged when, it's time to celebrate something.
Of course. Yeah.
Never was there just a natural gravitation to it. Can be just a part of your lifestyle, your experience, just like a wine.
Yeah.
And so super, super intrigued when I read that you had this desire and this interest and this vision to bring folks like me to a different place of understanding. And then
Hmm.
another personal story as well. Early in my career, the mid 90s, I had the chance to live and work abroad in England and spent time then in France, and just got just bit by the bug of how,
Hmm.
first of all, how incredibly familiar it felt to my New Orleans roots, and then
Yes. Yes.
secondly,
Absolutely. Yep.
brilliant it was, right? And so,
Mhm.
anyway, all of the backstory reasons why I'm looking at the magazine, I'm drawn into the aesthetics of how Mr. Cruz envisioned it. And then I
Yeah.
read the story and I was just drawn to it. And then you're a businesswoman. So the business geek in me is like, okay, we have to talk. We have to be friends. So Gina,
Oh.
tell us about a Vine Affair. First of all, what is the business? Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Vine Affair is essentially a champagne and caviar concierge, bringing the world of champagne to enthusiasts and collectors and those that just are curious to learn more in various platforms. So, whether that is through a small champagne tasting in someone's private home, to a corporate setting, maybe, a happy hour or a client gathering, to bringing people to Champagne, France on, very exclusive insider tours. So basically, I am obsessed with champagne and I
How did you become so? You gotta tell us, like, what?
yeah, it wasn't a direct path. It's not, I wasn't someone who decided that I loved wine and champagne at an early age or a young age, say, post graduation and decided to study it or worked in restaurants. It did not come that way at all to me.
Or was it a part of your table? Because, again, as you
Yeah.
learn and grow around the world, for some, a lot of my European friends, it was just, wine, champagne was a part of their family celebration, even as a young child.
So no, champagne was definitely not a part of my life at all. What happened was I would say my first encounter really with champagne was in my early 20s. I had moved from my small town here. So I'm originally from Punta Gorda. And I went to Florida State after graduation. I moved to Sarasota. And then I had the
Sorry about that
opportunity.
game last night. Just saying. This is supposed to be a timeless conversation, but anyway.
No worries, no worries. So yeah, so then I had the opportunity to go to.
Oh wait, Florida State, not Florida.
Yeah,
Okay,
I know, I
yeah,
know.
go.
It's fine. I was in we were at our clubhouse, so I was watching the game, and it's Florida. But either way, it's
Yes,
we keep an eye out
yes,
of
yes, yes,
everything.
yes.
But I had the opportunity to go to Asia. And so in Japan, because of the food and their appreciation for French culture, you have access to champagne quite easily through the restaurants and the bars and things like that. So I started to gravitate towards champagne already because it was easier to access. And I've never been a very big drinker at all. I never drank alcohol or I really enjoyed it ever until I started to drink champagne regularly, or what I thought was champagne at the time. I didn't know anything about it. And then when I got married, my husband's from Ireland. We moved there. And I had the opportunity to work out of London for several years for a fashion brand, and I was traveling 5 days a week for that brand in the different countries and cities of Europe. And so I had the opportunity to really engage in the food and wine culture in Europe. So my goal every time I was there was to eat with locals and to uh, order the local food, the food and wine, and to really realize that Europeans, it is a part of their table, it is a part of their culture, which it wasn't of mine, but I admired it and I loved it so much. And I felt like there was so much depth. I also am really drawn towards history, things like that. So it kind of just started off as a love for it. And then also, I felt like I needed to study it a little bit because I was sometimes hosting clients and people at these dinners, and I didn't know anything about a wine list. And so I was like, I need to understand this because I'm not seeing anything that I recognize. So I just want to self study. And when I started to study or explore it, I realized that there was so much about wine that the average person doesn't consume or understand. We're not given the education, but being able to understand really simple things about wine can help you when you are reading a wine list or you're buying wine in stores, especially if you enjoy drinking it. So I was fascinated when I started to learn about it. And I'm the kind of person that even if I'm working in fashion and even if I'm doing everything I can to be super successful in my current job, I'm always learning in other aspects. I'm always a learner. So if I gravitate towards something, I want to learn everything. So I started to go through my formal schooling, my formal WSET, and really properly learn about wine. And so as I was learning, I was sharing it on my social media and on my blog. And so, I mean, if you look all the way back on my social media, I'm pretty sure you're going to see some scary things because as I was learning, I was probably saying things as I was learning.
It's
And
the
just like,
same thing with the podcast, girl. It just,
yeah,
when you're out there, there are levels to this thing.
there are levels. And, but I'm so grateful that my audience kind of came with me on that journey. And also the champagne houses. I gravitated towards champagne and learning about champagne very early on in my studies. And so I decided when I was sharing this information that I would start to exclusively communicate just about champagne because I was studying about wine and the whole wine, you know, concept, but I really loved champagne. So my communication started to just be about champagne. And then I started to connect with some of the producers in some of the houses because I was talking about them. And so they would acknowledge that I was talking about them. And I was always the kind of person knowing that I was like, okay, I don't know everything I need to know. I would reach out on social media or through email. And I would ask the houses and the producers, hey, I'm about to write an article about your champagne. Can you just verify for me this information is correct? Because a lot of information about wine is incorrect on the internet. And so I would always check three sources. I have like, some sources that I would really trust before I really was like, okay, now I'm ready to write. So I'll write my opinion, but I was like, I need to get the backstory. Like, what's this champagne all about? What's this house all about? And that's how I really started connecting with the producers and the houses themselves. Wow. And to get their support in your business was huge. So in 2020, obviously we were all stuck indoors. And so I, by that time, had grown a good following and communicating about champagne. And so when I started to see a lot of fashion brands and food brands start doing IG lives, I was like, I bet I could do this. And I reached out to the producers and, of course, was sending them messages about, how's it over there in France? How are you guys during 2020? And they were devastated like we were, and they were really worried about their businesses and their livelihood, because at that time in the beginning of 2020, nobody was opening crazy bottles of champagne. At the beginning of 2020, we were all really conservative about our spending, right? Because we didn't know what was going to happen. Right. So the whole world stopped, restaurants closed. So, nobody was buying wine until we were kind of stuck in for a while and realized maybe we should go through our wine sell our wine cabinets, and maybe we should buy some, wine online.
Wine club even, right? I think I did.
Exactly. Maybe we should do this to keep ourselves sane a bit. And, and we're not spending money outdoors. So I guess we can spend a little money on what we're bringing in our homes. So I said to them, I said, listen, I want to bring you on my Instagram. I want to do an Instagram live. And I think what we're going to do is we'll find that one bottle of yours that is the most popular. Usually it's the non-vintage brut for every producer or every house that you can easily find online. Um, and we'll drink through that with you. And if you could give us a tour of your
Oh,
estate and tell us and tell us your story of your house. So yeah, I started to do that in
what a
2020.
brilliant idea. Nobody
Yeah,
else was doing that. In fact,
nobody,
I don't
yeah,
think I've seen
nobody.
anybody do that.
So nobody else was doing it, but it was starting, right? It was just starting in the wine community. So I loved it so much and I wanted to support and grow it bigger. So what I did is I grabbed my closest kind of other wine communicators that I knew pretty well, and I said, "Hey guys, what if we come up with one source for all of the lives that we're starting to see in the wine community? So
Um,
everyone can come to this Instagram account and find all the lives that were happening."
wow.
And for wine, let's say. So the four of us decided to come together and create a platform where, if you wanted to join an IG live and learn about Spanish wine or, Bordeaux or what have you, we would have all the information of the times and how to join and things like that. But it also like helped us create a community for us that were doing it, because people that maybe didn't know us personally would then know this platform and they would join ours. So it helped grow this sort of um, virtual
Wow.
tasting is what it
Oh,
was. And
and
so,
community. Like what
and
I love
community.
about that is that, good wine is so much about experience, as I've come to learn. And I am such a kindergartner as I sit with you, right? But, it creates this community, this experience, this conversation. Yeah, wow, so cool. So even the community is sort
Yeah.
of bringing about the attributes that, I think the whole concept does.
Yeah. And I think, in 2020, everything changed for everyone. And for me, I need to stay busy. I can't just, I, it's really, really difficult for me to have like a day where I'm not productive. I'm just one of those people that I get up early in the morning, even if I don't have to. I get out. I have
How
to do
early, Gina? Because we're trying to now get in your head because other people want to start stuff.
5 a.m.
Okay,
Yeah,
5
5
a.m.
a.m. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
So
then
5
what do you do?
a.m.
What happens next?
So 5 a.m. Well, and also I have to be mindful of the sunrise because I
Mhm.
may dictate my schedule, but my dog also dictates my schedule. So sorry. So yes, 5 a.m. is the goal. And that's when I want to wake up. But I also have to think about his walks. So as soon as it gets light out, we go for a walk. But he doesn't understand. And as soon as I wake up, he thinks, okay, mom's up. She's gonna take a shower, she's gonna get ready, and then she's gonna bring me for a walk. But sometimes 5 a.m., the sun's not rising right now until 6:45. So, it's that time that I'm like, oh, am I going to be okay with him crying about not going for a walk right away? That sort of thing. But
Yes.
normal, yes, 5 a.m. I wake up, I take a shower, I get ready for the day. I come to my office and I use do you know this book here? I'm going to show you the 5 minute journal.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah. So I spend maybe a little bit more than 5 minutes with the 5 minute journal, and I just kind of, um, yeah, go through what went well yesterday, what I'm grateful for, and what would make today great, right? As the 5 minute journal asks you to do. And I sit with the day a little bit. I write a to-do list, and then I bring him for his walk. And then I come back and I either go to Pilates, yoga, or I have a gym here. And then I start my day probably working around 8 a.m.
Mm, I
So,
love it. So this day was the day as we get to COVID and nobody has anywhere to go, nobody has anything to do, and you're like,
yeah.
okay, I've now been up since 5. It's
Yeah.
8 o'clock. We've done the walks, we've done all the things.
Yeah.
What are we doing now with the
Yeah.
rest of a 24-hour cycle, right? At this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also you're always looking for community as well, because I love to be a part of a community. So I always, virtually was the only way to do it. So I was on Instagram for hours and hours during the day because that was my platform that I grew. And my original growth with Instagram was back in 2018, I think. Over the summer, I had left my previous company. My husband got really busy with his job, so he's like, I need your help. I kind of need you to be like a secretary, booking my flights, like, because he was traveling a lot. So we agreed one of us had to kind of
By the
give
way,
in
your husband
because
has a pretty impressive background too, right?
yeah. He's been in racing his whole entire life, and at that time he was racing in Asia, and he was in, I think, several different series. So he was traveling a lot. I was traveling a lot, and so I was like, okay, I want to spend more time with him, and he needs help. So cool. And plus, I was kind of like really loving this wine thing. So I was like, maybe when I have time, I can like study wine and put a little bit more effort into my Instagram. And in 2018, there was a formula. It was very easy. The more time you spent on Instagram, the more you interacted with your audience, the more you had as a following. It was very simple. It's not like it is now.
Yeah, it's different.
So I put that summer, I went to Japan with him and helped him a little bit, but I had lots of time. So I spent 8 hours a day on my Instagram account engaging with people. And I did a 90 days of champagne summer where every single day I did a champagne 101 fact and broke it down on stories and stuff. And that's where the first set of growth came. And then in 2020, spending 8 hours a day on Instagram again in a different way. We had the IG lives and things like that. And then I had, yeah, and created a whole nother level of community because it was more really real time, being able to speak to people, as you're doing live. So it was really, really cool in 2020, a way to connect virtually.
That's so cool. All right. So you've got now Instagram, you've got the platform.
Yeah.
How did you jump to this place where you're now into experiences and
Mhm.
a Vine Affair as, your anchor business? How did you get there?
So in August 2020, I started the company or the LLC with my bestie. So she's a specialist in Spanish wine, but she has a normal corporate job. So eventually she had to go back. And so it all became mine in 2021. But for 6 months, we did it together, which was really fun. And I wish we could still do it together, but she has a different job. But so we decided, okay, because we started to do the lives together as well. So I did my own, and then I incorporate her into my Thursday lives that I started to do with food, because we wanted to help food companies who locally around the US who are just starting to do online.
Ah,
For the first time, we wanted to get their names out. So we found foods that paired really well with champagne.
I love
So caviar companies,
Gina's so
truffle.
generous. Like I have to just double click on what I'm hearing in your journey. Because so many times we look at folks that are successful and we hear the grit and the grind and all the stuff that you're probably made of, I'm made of, and all of that. But there's so much generosity that comes into this conversation, right? How do I help people just understand and communicate what's happening when COVID and they can't
Yeah,
do anything? How do I help businesses, right? And so I just believe my faith says that to whom much is given, much is required. And also, the more we give, the more we receive. And I
I
just
agree.
have to say that.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't, it's not something that comes, it's just in 2020, there's a lot going on, right? And so when you see an industry that you are not in but admire so much suffer, and you have an audience that you can see are willing to purchase a bottle and or purchase something to be a part of a conversation. I mean, I felt like it was I wanted to do that. It's you want to reach out if you can. In 2020, it was really, really difficult, and many businesses were closing. It was super sad to see some really amazing restaurants just completely have to close their doors. So it
So
was a
sad.
clever way to, I guess, help in any way. And I don't know what I saved or if I saved, but at least I was there, with some of
You
these
paid it
small,
forward,
small
girl.
businesses.
Receive it. And you're humble. So keep, that's good.
Thanks, but I mean, so we kind of did that, and then we thought, okay, well, we're putting a lot of time and effort, right? Where I would spend all day, every day preparing for these Instagram lives, right? Because they started to grow, and I was talking to people that I admired so much. So I would prepare really like the questions and the way that the format goes. And so we thought, oh, well, I wonder if we just created the Zoom.
Yeah.
Zooms were popular. What if we just did a Zoom and maybe people paid a little bit extra, and we can create a whole package for them, and we can get like some compensation, right? Just like for our time, which I don't think it ever happened really, but either way, we are like, at least let's form a business, and then we can make it legit because we really like to do it. So yeah, we formed a Vine Affair in August of 2020. And that's kind of where we started to do private. So you'd have to pay a ticket price, and the ticket price, we'd send you the champagne, the food or whatever, and we'd all hop on together in a closed environment. And, we wouldn't make it a special thing. And then in 2021, here in Florida, things opened up quicker than other places, and people were looking, and we have the gift of weather. So people were looking for, more in-person things, and with us being able to do some outdoor events and things like that while being very cautious. So it started kind of turned into this, in-person event sort of thing. It just felt natural to go from virtual to in-person. So in 2021, it was kind of a hybrid. So still doing lots of virtual, but also some in person when we could. And the fact that we had the virtual foundation was great, because in 2021, we were constantly opening and closing and opening, closing. And so in-person events were getting canceled all the time. And so for us, at least we could just bounce back to our roots, or I could bounce back to the roots of the virtual.
So girl, you created the omni channel of like an experience company, right? That's hilarious and so good. That's textbook Kellogg omni channel conversation. How do you create the flow that allows your business to be diverse enough to pivot, but to continue
Yeah.
to move forward in the process and to leverage the flow as well, right? Okay,
Yeah.
that's me kicking out. I'm sorry, I'll leave that alone.
No,
But
I love it. You're defining just what I was like kind of do. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Mine was more like always trying to be proactive instead of reactive, or if I was reactive, being as quick as possible. So you just like defined it in a much better way than
but you know what I'm going to say? And I think actually this relates to proven not perfect for me. When you lean into something that you're just genuinely passionate about,
yeah.
it's actually pretty amazing because it's so unscripted.
Yeah.
Um, it can be so unscripted. And I just, yeah, it just makes me smile because every other part of my life is incredibly regimented as a corporate executive, right? Incredibly regimented. And I love that too, right? I'm sort of a Libra in its truest sense, right? Do
Yeah.
not try to put me in a box because you will get the wrong box, I promise, right?
Yeah.
But on the passion end, there's that joy of being able to be very unscripted. And man, when you can make that your core business, I feel like that's the space where you're living right now. All right, so now we have to talk a little bit about the bubbly, okay?
Sure.
So for folks who, um, you know, enjoy wine, enjoy good wine, how do they think about the difference between wine and champagne? Let's talk about that, right? Like I'm taking you
Sure.
101. This
I love
maybe
it. It's
this
my
maybe
favorite.
even isn't 101. This is maybe like, for dummies. I don't know, pick it. But tell us the difference between wine and champagne. So basic, but I don't know that everybody really has an articulation of that.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's why I do what I do, right? Because champagne is so misunderstood. Maybe people understand it a little bit more now, but it really is still very much misunderstood. So champagne is wine, right? So champagne is wine. but it is a wine coming from a certain region, a designated wine region in France. So
Mm.
everything in the border of Champagne is considered champagne, whatever the wine is that is coming from there. Outside of that border, if it's in a sparkling version, it is just sparkling wine.
Ah,
Yeah,
so Domaine Carneros is sparkling wine. It's
it
not
is
champagne.
sparkling wine.
Ah,
Exactly. The
yes.
Domaine Carneros, but Domaine Carneros has a great heritage because it's originally the company originally is, it's bought by Taittinger, Champagne Taittinger. So
Mhm.
they bought Domaine Carneros. So they have already a really great heritage and understanding of making really great quality sparkling wine. But even owned by a champagne company, they still can't call it champagne because it's not from Champagne, France.
I love that. Okay, so there's a myth buster right there. You're either having sparkling wine or champagne, period.
Exactly.
Period.
Period.
Yes.
Period.
So, okay, if you now are considering champagne, um, how do you talk about palate interest? So if someone is typically a drier wine palate over a fruit forward one, bubbly, I know that I'm mixing all sorts of attributes
Sure.
together. But how do you think about the describing the texture to help someone understand where they may want to start?
So I always say if you don't know anything about champagne, the easiest way to start is to start with the Grand Marquis. So the big, big names, the big houses, and start with their non-vintage brut. So the non-vintage brut in champagne is basically a flagship champagne of a house or their house style. So when you drink a non-vintage brut, so from Veuve Clicquot or Moet or Taittinger, this non-vintage brut that you can find very easily
Yes.
is what they sell the most of. They spend the most time on it,
Mm.
and it's supposed to completely define their style.
Oh.
So when you open a bottle of Veuve Clicquot and you open a bottle of Taittinger, they're going to be very different because those houses have a different style.
Oh.
Sometimes this style means the grape that they maybe focus on or have, because champagne, the non-vintages are a blend, and the majority of them are a blend of the three major grapes in Champagne, which are Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Meunier. And
Mm.
so the houses sometimes based on their
Maybe
vineyards and
that's why I love it
stylistic.
so much because I love Chardonnay and I love Pinot
Yeah,
Noir. Pinot Noir is like my favorite red for some reason.
yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah. But they look or they're interpreted differently in Champagne.
Yes. Mhm.
So I always say if you say you're a Chardonnay hater, don't say you're a Chardonnay hater until you've had Chardonnay in Champagne because it's completely different. It's completely different. So every time I always try to make sure when I'm doing tastings that we are exploring the different grapes or different styles, because then once you put them next side by side, then you realize, wow, they're all really different. Like all champagne, it does not taste the same.
Mhm.
And then you can try to understand based on those major houses,
Mhm.
digging deep into their style and what makes them what or why you like them.
Mhm.
So, for example, if you're gravitating toward Taittinger, you're gravitating towards this fresh, fruity, Chardonnay-driven style. Then, because you know a little bit more and say, okay, I really like that taste, you can find other producers and other houses that are the same, whether they're making their champagne very similar in style to Taittinger, they're using kind of the same percentage of grape, Chardonnay, whatever. That's how you can start exploring what you really like and what you don't like in champagne. Even for myself, I have stylistic preferences. Um,
Mhm.
so that's the best way to start is just, the big major houses, see which ones they're non-vintage champagne, grab them off the shelf, see what you like and see what you don't like. And then, but if you don't like it and if you like it, you have to start understanding why you don't. So dig a little
So
deeper.
there's probably so many tutorials or things to visit on your website, right?
Mhm.
Because I know for a lot of people, this is literally only wetting the taste as we think
Yeah.
about it, right? There's so much to this. I'm going to suggest that people go to a Vine Affair on Instagram. There's
Yep.
loads of content there.
Yep.
And also, I mean, visually, aesthetically, you'll just enjoy the experience where it takes you. And then if you're like me and you're getting really, really curious, get a good group of 12 and call up Gina and Vine Affair and set your own perfectly curated experience in France.
Oh
Can
yeah.
do that, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So we started the trips in 2022. And it's amazing just because I love going to Champagne. So I was like, how can I go to Champagne more?
Gina, I
I bring
relate
people
you.
with me and then I can go to Champagne more. So I started the tours in June. And so now I do the two set tours in Champagne. So June 20, my next ones are I'm already going in October, but 2024 is now planned. June 2024 and October 2024 are where you can grab, yourself, a couple of friends, a spouse, whatever, and then come along on that trip. And there's max 12 people, or like you said, a group of 8 or more can give me a call and say, I have a group of 8 or more. We want to buy out a trip.
Wow.
Can you plan us a trip to Champagne? And I'll host you in Champagne when you want to go. So it's, that's the flexibility that we now have for 2024, which it was before just the set dates. So
I love that. That is so good. Okay,
yeah.
now we got to go back because we just
Okay.
have to, because somebody's daughter, little sister, daughter-in-law, all the girlies, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in the space where I talk a lot about my mom worked hard, and my aunties, and they just did all the things that they did, but they didn't necessarily take a lot of time out to walk us along the journey on the why
Mhm.
and the what and all the things, right? And
Mhm.
so we were left to create our own stories. And as I've become an adult and I get to sit with them and go back and feel very confident to like push back and ask questions and all the things, I realized that there was a backstory. I realized that there were elements that I had no idea about, right? And so
Mhm.
it was definitely not as easy as maybe I thought it was, in the backstory. So this podcast, Proven Not Perfect, is, definitely features my Village of All Stars, which you are one. And in being, an all-star, we're also very humbled to share that we're not perfect and there is a backstory, and maybe there is a time we didn't get it right. So I'd love to hear, what you'd share with us about maybe Gina, back at 11 and what you were thinking about, and what your journey to the Gina you are now looks like.
Um, so yeah, I mean, there are tons of things for me that I didn't get right, right? So and when I was younger, wine was definitely, or champagne was definitely not on my radar at all. I was a show kid, and so I was a performer. And I went to Florida State University as a voice major, and came out, and my parents were like, well, now what? And I was like, oh, well, I don't know if I really want to be a singer anymore.
Mm.
What? Yeah. Yeah. I studied
We
it.
got to talk about that. I got an actress that went to Syracuse, and yeah, we got to talk about that one.
I
Another.
know. I kind of was like, well, you know what? I didn't like studying it. Like I really didn't like the grind of being a singer. I love to do it. I love to perform, but I just didn't like, all of the, stuff that went along with it. I just really lost my passion when I went to Florida State and studied it, which is kind of crazy. But
But
anyways,
that's
at
what
the
college
same,
is for. That's what
yeah,
college is for us
yeah,
to sort of unpack who we thought we were when we arrived, right? So I
exactly.
love that.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, my parents were like, well, that in that case, you're really going to need to go get a job, just like a normal job. And I was like, okay. So I was already working in like retail all throughout high school and college. So I just had the opportunity to work in retail and be a retail manager. And my parents were like, well, at least it has really good benefits and you get paid, you know. And I was
That's
like,
all they
okay,
cared about, Gina.
that's all
Benefits
they
and
cared
pay.
about. Yeah, yeah, that's all they cared about. And I had a lot of room, like the company I was working for at the time had a lot of room for growth. So um I just worked really hard and I kind of just put my blinders on, right? So I was like, okay, so this is where I am. It's not really what I decided to do, but I'm just going to work as hard as I can and see how far I got. And I was rewarded for my hard work and got to travel over the world and go to Asia. So for me, I was like, cool, this is it. Like, this is great. And then when I moved, when I, when we got married and worked for another company, which I absolutely loved to work for, and also was doing corporate retail and really working my way up and really, really loved what I did. It wasn't, fashion never filled the void for me
Mm,
that music did. It was more of like an emotional thing.
yeah,
It was more of this like meaningful thing,
yeah,
that fashion just didn't give me,
yeah.
looking for a sense of purpose maybe. And so when I found wine, that's kind of when I just started to fill that void of this like meaning and this there's so much more to champagne than just champagne. It's not just about drinking the wine. There are people behind it. There's a
Yeah.
whole history behind it. So you're getting history, you're getting science, you're getting pleasure, you're getting all of these different elements that make it really complex and challenging, and you're always learning. But back to your point of like not always getting things right. Yeah, I didn't get it right because I didn't follow my path that I thought I was, going to be on since I was about 5 years old. I didn't really go in a career it was fine. I was doing really well. I was flourishing in the career, but it wasn't, I never got that satisfaction out of it. So I wasn't in maybe the right path for the time, but not in the right career that gave me fulfillment. And when I fell into kind of this, well, I shouldn't say fall into because I pursued it quite hard.
Yeah, 8 hours a day,
Yeah,
that's not
yeah,
fulfilling.
I pursued it quite hard actually. Um, but yeah, and in this business, this is the first time I'm being an entrepreneur, and that is, you get a lot of things wrong all the time.
Ooh, sister,
All
say
the
it
time.
again. Because in 2020, not only did you start a business, but I did too. And
Oh,
let's just say 3 years later, mine, I had to fail forward and acknowledge that it was a great idea, not the right time, but a
yeah,
wonderful learning, right? And
yeah.
here you're going, and I'm rooting, and that's another reason why I was like, oh my God, we gotta talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but it's hard, it's so hard. Even now, like every day you wake up. Told this to my husband the other day. Every day I wake up like positive and ready to go, like and energized. And like my goal is to keep moving forward, to, you know, be more creative with my business, to think outside the box. But not every day gives you that back.
Nope. Nope. It's true. It's
Not every day
true.
gives you that back.
And the
And
winners know that, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah,
like it's really hard, and you have to dig deep, and you have to dig deeper than what you actually like. Sometimes, some days I'm like, I actually can't dig any deeper. I can't be any more like pushing any more than like what I'm doing now. Like you hit breaking points all the time in your business
yeah.
where you're just like, no, like, come on. I've put all of this work, and you'll throw things out there to people and you're like, oh, this is a great idea. This is a great concept. This is a great event. This is what, and then it's like, what?
Yeah.
Nobody saw that. Nobody thought the same. Like nobody wants to buy a ticket to that event, or nobody wants to go to Champagne at that time. There's a lot of failures that you're dealing with when you're on this journey, and you have to be ready for that. Like you have to know it doesn't. Nobody gets it easy.
to. And it's humbling and rewarding at the same time. But I do believe that winners understand that you're going to wake up and you're going to have this same zest and zeal. And the day gets going and it may take you 20 turns later. But I think the key, again, that winner's mentality is, I don't know about you, but when that day happens and it twists me all around, turns me all around, sometimes it's telling me to just stop. And
Yeah.
that's been real growth for me, to just know that if that day is giving me that, just stop. And honestly, I give credit to yoga for that, because
Me too. Me too. I
it,
went to yoga yesterday morning because I was like, I told Richard, I was like, nothing is stopping me from going to yoga tomorrow. Like
me.
I need this.
I literally ran into, I needed yin, and I needed so badly that if I had to no,
Yep.
I had to do it.
It's been grounding me for years.
Yes,
Maybe over a decade now. Yoga has been grounding me.
Seriously, that is another connection for us, right? Because it is the one place where, and I hope people get this, right? I mean, everybody has their different reasons why, but it is the one place for me, outside of, church, right? But there I'm focused still yet externally, in an experience of praise, right? When I do yoga, I literally am focused on what's happening between my head to my toes. And I'm scanning all of the elements inside of me, completely oblivious to everything around me. It's just what's happening in me, and how even am I showing up in the places that are important to me, right? And so, to me, it's the combination, girl, church and yoga. Look, sit still.
Absolutely. I read I think it was a meme yesterday or the day before. Everyone goes to yoga for their flexibility, and then they realize it's actually about mental health or something like that, and you don't even realize it. Because I was like, oh, yoga's cool, like let me try yoga, oh, it's going to be great for my flexibility and like fun. And then all of a sudden you realize, and you don't even see it coming, that you are practicing it outside the studio, off of your mat, in times where you really need, whether it's the breath work, whether it's meditation. It's like it just clicks all of a sudden, and you're like, whoa. And so now when I go to yoga, I'm not going to yoga because I need my flexibility. I need to feel better. My body needs to feel better. I need to like align myself. I need to breathe better. These are the kind of reasons.
Move some stuff out. Because let's just say, as a businesswoman, how many times are the inputs coming where your outside voice would like to manage it differently than you should. So you keep it in your inside, right? And you have to move it out. You have to. Ladies, you got to move it out, because if it doesn't move out, it stays in there, right?
It does. It does. And it creates a lot of problems.
God, keep your voice. If you're in a, man, I tell you, I'm just on such a mission. Voice is so important. Moving stuff that you didn't ask for out of you is so important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we should do yoga and champagne.
We should do yoga and champagne. I have a friend who does, she owns a company called Vina Vinyasa where she does yoga and wine. And I'm always like, it's perfect. Yoga and champagne.
I got you. I'm yoga teacher trained. So y'all heard it first. Me and Gina, yoga and champagne.
Yoga and champagne.
But Gina, you're going to have to give us a cute name. It can't be yoga and champagne. We need something cute.
Yeah, I'll have to think of that. So it'll come though. Usually these separate things just kind of come out of nowhere, when you're not even thinking about them.
That's when we'll know. Gina, this has been so fun.
Yeah, it's been great. This has been such a great conversation with you. I've enjoyed every minute of it. So thank you.
Well, I know that everybody that's listened is not only inspired by you, but also really curious to get to know the champagne more. And we all know
Yeah,
what sparkling wine is over champagne. Never to be confused
absolutely.
again.
When you have the chance to drink sparkling wine or champagne, always choose champagne.
Woo! All right, there you go. Gina, take care. It's so good. I look forward to spending more time with you.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much.
Mhm.